your friend solve maths problems during maths class because the maths class is too dull?
He's not my friend.
Well, I'm told he's your only friend.
Who said that?
Something's come up concerning Morecambe.
Why am I here?
Christopher is dead.
There are scenes that hit us hard with tragic impact. Through this video, I want to explore what makes these scenes so impactful, to discover how to create tragedy, and then how to heighten tragic impact. Before I begin, I'd like to quickly point out that my crowdfunding campaign is still currently running, and I would greatly appreciate it if you could give it a look, maybe donate or share it around to people who may be interested. Thank you. First, I looked at polarity shifts and how to set up a scene shift. As Robert McKee writes in his book Story, the effect is to crack open the gap between expectation and result, turning their outer fortunes, inner life, or both, from the positive to the negative, or the negative to the positive, in terms of values the audience understands are at risk.
Where are you going? Huh?
What's going on? People in the house.
Hey! They're in the elevator, both of them, heading down.
He introduces this idea of predetermined values, which can then be manipulated to shift and turn a scene. He goes on to assert that every scene must turn, to highlight how important it is to include these scene shifts. Lee Allen Howard breaks this down into a more applicable format, writing, "Your characters begin the scene with two things: the current charge, positive or negative, of their core value at stake, and their immediate goal. Then, they encounter the opposition, who also has a goal and value of their own, engage in conflict, exchange escalating behavior beats, finally experience an outcome. This outcome is the turning point of the scene, the moment where your character's value changes polarity." This is an interesting addition to McKee's idea as it includes the middle element of conflict. This conflict will encompass scene beats whereby action is taken by either side to aim towards either a positive or negative outcome. In effect, this will heighten the tension, create doubt in the audience on whether there will be a positive or negative outcome, ending in the climax of the scene, whereby an outcome is experienced, turning the scene. What we can take from this is that tragic scene shifts, which are value shifts from the positive to the negative, with relative levels taken into account, meaning that going from negative to even more negative fits under this bracket, can be increased for impact with the added facet of conflict, giving equal power and equal possibility to both a negative and positive outcome for the scene, so that there is hope that we can take away. Rebecca Bushnell introduces the idea of prophecy in tragedy, considering the tragic heroes resistant to entrapment in their own story as represented in the future language of prophecy. The tragic hero's ethical drive to reject or subvert prophecy, that is, to write their own stories, but I concluded that, of course, they could not do so in the end, because their stories belong to everyone, not to themselves alone. In this, tragedy is predetermined, pre-written, to say that the audience is aware of the inevitable, but the story, the narrative, takes us through the conflict of the protagonist fighting for another outcome. In this, we are presented with Ellie growing old and weak, and so that the audience has a firm understanding of the inevitability of her death. This becomes the prophecy that protagonist Carl resists against, and in seeing him create this conflict before the inevitable tragedy, we feel a deeper impact in the scene. This opens up the time-space of tragedy from merely the present to the future in prophecy, and the past in consequence going forward. Bushnell asserts that tragic time is ever moving, never stopping, whereas comic time seems separated from reality, able to be suspended. to include this element of realism and inevitability, the ongoing clock. These ideas could be headed towards the idea of empathy in tragedy. In order to feel the tragic impact of the scene, we must necessarily empathize with the character, to feel the shock of their emotions. In Up, we're not feeling sad because Ellie is dying, because we do not empathize with her. Rather, we feel sad that Carl is losing her because we empathize with him. The greater empathy we can evoke in our audience, the greater empathic distress we can cause. And so, understanding which scene elements evoke empathy, how to write a character that the audience empathizes with, will help to heighten the impact of tragic scene shifts. Lastly, I want to delve into the facet of determinism in tragedy. The idea that the choices that the characters have made, moreover, the errors that they have made, lead to the suffering or consequences that they face. This links in with Aristotle's ideas of hamartia. The person experiencing a change of fortune should be one who falls into adversity not through evil or depravity, but through some kind of error. In the opening sequence of Up, the tragedy comes with the regret that Carl feels for not going on the big adventure with Ellie.
There in a blimp. Swear you'll take us. Cross your heart. Cross it. Cross your heart. Good. You promised. No backing out.
Her death is amped up for tragedy because of this missed opportunity. We need determinism in the characters. The world cannot decide for them. In Testament of Youth, it feels like the world is against the protagonist, that the world is taking actions against the protagonist, which results in scenes and sequences that the protagonist is merely reacting to the actions of the world around them. But this is not the structure of narrative tragedy. In narrative cinema, there is determinism. Vera is feeling the loss of Roland because war exists. And war exists because patriarchy exists. And patriarchy exists because people allow it to. There is determinism. Tragedy has dramatically changed its face throughout the centuries, so there's no doubt that going forward, new elements will evolve and after understood how to be manipulated into our stories. But the elements of determinism, empathy, prophecy, conflict, and polarity shifts are currently important to understand in order to create an impactful, tragic scene. If you have not done so already, please, 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 please check out my crowdfunding campaign. I need the funds in order to create this new, exciting short film that I'm trying to tell. It is so personal to me, and it is so important to me that I make this, that I tell this story to the world.